These pictures reveal the arrogance with which the German warlords meet the charges of criminal injustice to civilized people. Prosecutor Robert Jackson of the United States opens the trial with a strong indictment of the defendant.
Prosecutor for the United States of America.
The privilege of opening the first trial in history for crimes against the peace of the world imposes a grave responsibility. The wrongs which we seek to condemn and punish have been so calculated, so malignant and so devastating that civilization cannot tolerate their being ignored because it cannot survive their being repeated. That four great nations, flushed with victory and stung with injury, stay the hand of vengeance and voluntarily submit their captive enemies to the judgment of the law is one of the most significant tributes that power has ever paid to reason. In the prisoner's dock sit 20-odd broken men, reproached by the humiliation of those they have led almost as bitterly as by the desolation of those they have attacked. Their personal capacity for evil is forever past. It is hard now to perceive in these men as captives the power which, as Nazi leaders, they once dominated most of the world and terrified most of it. Merely as individuals, their fate is of little consequence to the world. What makes this inquest significant is that these prisoners represent sinister influences that will lurk in the world long after their bodies have returned to dust. We will show them to be the living symbols of racial hatreds, terrorism, and of violence, and of the arrogance and cruelty of power. We must never forget that the record on which we judge these defendants today is the record on which history will judge us tomorrow. If these men are the first war leaders of a defeated nation to be prosecuted in the name of the law, they are also the first to be given a chance to plead for their lives in the name of the law.
The most savage and numerous crimes committed by the Nazis were those against the Jews.
It is our purpose to show a plan and a design to which all Nazis were fanatically committed to annihilate all Jewish people. History does not record a crime ever perpetrated against so many victims. You will have difficulty, as I have, to look into the faces of these defendants and believe that in this 20th century, human beings could inflict such sufferings as will be proved here on their own countrymen as well as upon so-called inferior enemies.
Of the 9,600,000 Jews who lived in Nazi-dominated Europe, 60% are authoritatively estimated to have perished. We charge that all of the atrocities against Jews were the manifestation and culmination of the Nazi plan to which every defendant in this box was a party. The real complaining party at your bar is civilization. Civilization asks whether law is so laggard as to be utterly helpless to deal with crimes of this magnitude by criminals of this order of importance. It does not expect that you can make war impossible. It does expect that your juridical action will put the forces of international law, its precepts, its prohibitions, and most of all, its sanctions on the side of peace, so that men and women of goodwill in all countries may have leave to live by no man's leave underneath the law.
That these defendants now ask this tribunal to say that they are not guilty of planning, executing, or conspiring to commit this long list of crimes and wrongs. They stand before the record of this tribunal as blood-stained Gloucester stood by the body of his slain king. He begged of the widow, as they beg of you, "Say I slew them not." And the Queen replied, "Then say they were not slain, but dead they are." If you were to say of these men that they are not guilty, it would be as true to say that there has been no war, that there are no slain, that there has been no crime.
The International Military Tribunal will now pronounce the sentences on the defendants convicted on this indictment. Defendant Hermann Wilhelm Göring, on the counts of the indictment on which you have been convicted, the International Military Tribunal sentences you to death by hanging. On the counts of the indictment on which you have been convicted, the tribunal sentences you to imprisonment for life. Defendant Joachim von Ribbentrop, on the counts of the indictment on which you have been convicted, the tribunal sentences you to death by hanging. Defendant Wilhelm Keitel, on the counts of the indictment on which you have been convicted, the tribunal sentences you to death by hanging.